An old woman helps a millionaire fix his broken car. When he sees the ring on her finger, he freezes. On the dusty road where luxury rarely crossed paths with simplicity, a $500,000 car sat with its hood open, smoke escaping from the overheated engine, while its owner, one of the richest men in the country, watched in horror as the wrinkled hands of an unknown elderly woman touched his precious vehicle. But the real shock was yet to come, when the golden gleam on her finger would reveal a secret capable of turning his world upside down. Subscribe if this story finds you and let me know where in the world you're watching from. In the outskirts of Riverdale, a small town in the suburbs of Connecticut known for its imposing mansions and wealthy residents, Mary Thompson walked slowly along the rural road that led to her modest home. At 78 years old, she maintained a simple routine, waking at dawn, tending to her small herb garden, visiting the local market, and returning before dusk. She wore a worn but impeccably clean coat and carried a shopping bag already worn by time. The autumn sun was beginning to set when Mary spotted a luxury car stopped on the shoulder. A gleaming black Bentley Continental GT shined under the last rays of sun in stark contrast to the dusty road. Next to the vehicle, a man in a custom-made Italian suit was gesturing furiously on his phone. His face showed frustration as he paced back and forth, occasionally kicking the car's tire as if that could solve his problem. Mary could easily have continued on her way. After all, people like her rarely got involved with the problems of the rich. But something in the man's desperation made her stop. "Car trouble, young man?" Mary asked, her soft voice cutting through the air filled with the imprecations the man was launching into his phone. Alexander Morgan, CEO of Morgan Enterprises, and one of the richest men in the country, turned abruptly. His intense, calculating eyes assessed the elderly woman from head to toe. Dressed in simple clothes and carrying a shopping bag from the local market, she seemed completely out of place beside his $500,000 Bentley. "Obviously," Alexander replied with disdain. "And unless you have a mechanic hidden in that bag, I doubt you can help." Mary was not shaken by his harshness. After 7 decades of life, she had learned that arrogance often masked insecurity. "Actually, I worked with automobiles for most of my life," she replied calmly, placing her bag on the ground. "What seems to be the problem?" Alexander laughed, the sound echoing like an insult. "Ma'am, this is a Bentley Continental GTW12. It's not like the Ford Pinto you might have driven in the 70s. The basic principles of mechanics haven't changed as much as you might imagine," Mary retorted, maintaining her dignity. "The engine still needs fuel, air, and ignition to function properly." "I appreciate the basic science lesson," Alexander mocked, "but I think I'll wait for professional assistance service." The sky was beginning to darken, and Mary observed the clouds forming on the horizon. "Looks like it's going to rain soon," she commented. "And from what I heard at the market, there's a storm approaching. The assistance service will probably take hours to arrive in this weather." Alexander looked at the sky and then at his gold watch. He had an important meeting the next morning, and the prospect of being stuck on that rural road for hours did not please him. "Look, I appreciate your concern, but I really doubt you can do anything useful here," he said, his tone slightly less aggressive, but still condescending. Mary sighed. "May I at least take a look? If I can't help, you won't have lost anything but a few minutes." Reluctant and clearly skeptical, Alexander finally nodded. "The car simply died while I was driving. Probably something electronic." Mary asked him to open the hood, and to Alexander's surprise, she began to examine the engine with the confidence of someone familiar with what she was doing. Her wrinkled hands moved with precision, checking connections and components. "Young man, do you regularly check the oil in this beautiful car?" she asked, without lifting her eyes from the engine. "I have people who do that for me," Alexander replied impatiently. "Well, it seems those people haven't been doing a good job," Mary observed. Your oil level is critically low, and there are signs of overheating in the engine. Alexander rolled his eyes, unable to hide his skepticism. With all due respect, ma'am, I find it hard to believe that elderly woman, a woman, Mary completed his sentence with a serene smile. You can say it. I'm not easily offended. That's not what I was going to. Alexander tried to correct himself, although they both knew that was exactly what he was thinking. I have something that might help in my bag, said Mary, ignoring the man's discomfort. She removed a small bottle from her shopping bag. Engine oil. I always carry some with me, old habit. Do you really expect me to put that generic oil in a $500,000 Bentley? Alexander seemed genuinely offended by the suggestion. Do you prefer to spend the night here? Mary replied with a tranquility that contrasted with the man's growing irritation. The first drops of rain began to fall, and Alexander looked again at his watch. Defeated by the situation, he made a gesture of surrender. Do what you think is best, but know that I'll hold you responsible if anything goes wrong. With precise movements, Mary added the oil and made some adjustments to the engine. After a few minutes of silent work, she asked Alexander to try starting the car again. To the executive's complete surprise, the Bentley's engine came to life with a smooth purr. Unbelievable, Alexander murmured, divided between relief and incredulity. How? Experience. Just that, Mary replied, cleaning her hands on a handkerchief she took from her pocket. Now, I advise you to take this car for a complete checkup as soon as possible. There are signs of other problems that will need professional attention. The rain was beginning to intensify, and Alexander, momentarily touched by a rare feeling of gratitude, offered, May I give you a ride to your home? It's the least I can do. Mary accepted the offer with a nod. As she collected her shopping bag, the sleeve of her coat rose slightly, revealing a golden ring on her ring finger. It wasn't just any ring, it had an intricate and distinctive design that immediately captured Alexander's attention. The executive froze, his eyes fixed on the ring. For a moment, it seemed that his entire arrogant posture had been replaced by an expression of absolute shock. That ring, he stammered, his voice losing all its previous confidence. Where did you get it? Mary looked at the ring as if she had forgotten she was wearing it. Oh, this? It's a long story, young man, a long story. During the short journey to Mary's house, a tense silence filled the luxurious interior of the Bentley. Alexander cast furtive glances at the ring on the elderly woman's finger, his mind clearly disturbed. His hands gripped the steering wheel with unnecessary force, and his countenance had drastically changed from the initial arrogance to something close to apprehension. Mary observed the change in behavior with silent interest. She had lived long enough to recognize when someone was deeply affected by something. Turn right at the next entrance, Mary instructed gently. My house is the small one at the end of the dirt road. Alexander followed the instructions mechanically, still apparently lost in thought. When he finally parked in front of Mary's modest wooden house, he seemed to have made a decision. Ma'am, Mary, correct? Excuse me, but I need to ask again about that ring. It's extremely important for me to know how it came into your hands. Mary studied the young businessman's face for a moment. As I said, it's a long story. Perhaps you'd like to come in and have a cup of tea while we talk? The rain doesn't seem like it's going to pass anytime soon. Alexander hesitated for only a second before accepting the invitation, his curiosity clearly overcoming any discomfort with the simple environment. Mary's house was the opposite of the world Alexander was accustomed to. Furniture that was old but well preserved, photographs in wooden frames, and a fireplace that provided warmth to the main room. There was no visible technology beyond an old landline phone and a small radio in the kitchen. Please, sit down, Mary offered, indicating an armchair as she headed toward the kitchen. I'll prepare some tea. Alexander remained standing, his eyes scanning the photographs on the walls. Most showed Mary at different ages, some with a man he presumed to be her late husband, others with children who were probably her children or grandchildren. Nothing seemed to explain how a woman who lived so modestly possessed a ring he had immediately recognized. In the kitchen, Mary prepared the tea with precise movements, occasionally observing Alexander through the open door. There was something almost satisfying about seeing the powerful businessman so out of place in her humble home. When she returned with 2 cups of tea, she found Alexander closely studying a particular photograph. "This man in the picture with you," he began, pointing to the image of a much younger Mary beside an elegant gray-haired gentleman. "He was my mentor," Mary replied, placing the cups on the small center table. "Harrington Sheffield. Do you know the name?" Alexander's face visibly paled. "Harrington Sheffield, the founder of Sheffield Industries." Mary nodded calmly. "The very one. A remarkable man. He gave me this ring many years ago." "Impossible," Alexander murmured, finally accepting the offered cup of tea, although he seemed to have completely forgotten to drink it. Sheffield was known for giving these rings only to members of his innermost circle. They were symbols of absolute trust. "You are correct," Mary confirmed. "Only 5 people received a ring like this." Harrington believed that a person's true value was not measured by their bank account, but by their character and integrity. Alexander stared at the elderly woman with new intensity. "You're not just any old woman who knows how to fix cars, are you?" Mary smiled, her eyes revealing a depth of experience that Alexander was only beginning to comprehend. "I was never just anything, young man. Just as you are not just a rich man in an expensive car." "How did you meet Sheffield?" asked Alexander, unable to hide his growing curiosity. "I started as a mechanic's assistant in Sheffield Industries' first workshop in 1965, Mary replied. "At that time, it was almost impossible for a woman to work with automobiles, but Harrington recognized my talent and gave me an opportunity when no one else would." The rain intensified outside, creating a curtain of water that isolated the small house from the outside world. Inside, Mary was beginning to reveal a story that left Alexander increasingly astonished. "In 5 years, I became head of Sheffield's mechanical engineering department," Mary continued. "I collaborated on the development of the advanced combustion system that revolutionized the automotive industry in the. You probably studied it in engineering school, although my name is rarely mentioned in the books." Alexander swallowed hard. The Sheffield Advanced Combustion System was legendary in the world of automotive engineering, an innovation that had established new standards of efficiency and performance for the entire industry. You are Mary Thompson." "The Mary Thompson?" he asked, his voice almost a reverent whisper. Mary tilted her head in modest acknowledgement. "Some still remember, apparently." "Remember?" Alexander seemed genuinely shocked. "The system you developed continues to be the basis of modern engine engineering. At Morgan Enterprises, all engineers study your work. It's an honor to meet you." The transformation in Alexander's behavior was remarkable. The arrogant man who had treated Mary with disdain just an hour before now looked at her with respect, bordering on veneration. "If I may ask," Alexander began, clearly choosing his words carefully, "why would someone with your achievements live like this?" He gestured around, indicating the modest house. Mary took a sip of her tea before answering. "What you see is simplicity. I see as freedom. After 20 years at Sheffield, I decided I wanted a different life. Harrington understood my decision, although he tried to convince me to stay." Alexander seemed confused. "But you could have been a millionaire. You could have had your own company, mansions, cars like mine. And would that have brought me more happiness?" Mary asked, with a tranquil smile. You seemed quite unhappy when we met, despite all your millions. The comment hit Alexander like a direct blow, making him look away momentarily. What many don't know, Mary continued, is that I didn't leave Sheffield empty-handed. Harrington insisted that I accept a significant stake in the company when I retired. The last agreement I signed guaranteed perpetual royalties on all technologies derived from my work. Alexander's eyes widened at the implication. That would mean, it means I could buy 50 Bentleys like yours if I wanted, Mary completed with a light laugh. But I prefer my bicycle for going to the market. Fewer problems with the oil level. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of rain and the occasional distant thunder. Alexander seemed to be processing everything he had discovered, completely reassessing his initial judgments about the elderly woman before him. The ring, he finally said. Sheffield told me about them before he passed away. He said they were given only to those he considered true visionaries, people who not only had exceptional talent but also unwavering integrity. Mary turned the ring on her finger, observing the intricate patterns engraved in the gold. Harrington believed that power and wealth were tools, not goals. This ring represents a commitment to values that transcend material success. He told me he had given a ring to an extraordinary woman who had forever changed the automotive industry. Alexander continued. But he never mentioned your name. He only said that I should learn from your example if I truly wanted to succeed him. Mary looked at Alexander with renewed curiosity. You knew Harrington personally? He was my mentor in the early years of Morgan Enterprises, Alexander replied. He invested in my company when no one else believed in the potential of what I was developing. He always knew how to recognize promising talents, Mary commented. Until his death, he kept a watchful eye for young innovators. The revelation that both had been mentored by the same man created an unexpected connection between Mary and Alexander. The businessman now looked at the elderly woman not only with respect, but with genuine curiosity. Sheffield always said I had technical brilliance, but needed to work on my character. Alexander admitted, I guess today I proved he was right. Mary smiled with understanding. Harrington had a special talent for identifying not just who we were, but what we could become. Alexander hesitated before asking the next question. Do you follow what's happening at Morgan Enterprises? Do you know what we've been doing with automotive technology? I read the newspapers, Mary replied. Your innovations in electric motors are impressive from a technical point of view, but I have my reservations about accessibility. Technology that only benefits the rich is not true innovation. It was a direct criticism, but delivered with such gentleness that Alexander could not feel offended. In fact, the words seemed to echo the warnings that Sheffield had given him years before. It's a fair observation, he acknowledged. We're focused on luxury cars because the profit margins are higher. The shareholders are not the only measure of success, Mary interrupted gently. Harrington taught me that, and I imagine he tried to teach you too. As the storm began to subside outside, Alexander seemed to be in the midst of his own internal storm, a conflict between the ruthless businessman he had become and the ideals his mentor had tried to instill in him. I have a proposal, he finally said, placing his teacup on the table. Morgan is developing a new line of hybrid engines, but we're facing challenges with the combustion system. It would be an honor to have your opinion on the designs. Mary raised an eyebrow. Are you offering a consulting job to an elderly woman you met on the road? I'm offering a partnership to one of the most brilliant minds in automotive engineering. Alexander corrected, and, if I may add, to a person who clearly still has much to teach, not just about engines. Mary considered the offer for a moment. I have no interest in returning to the corporate world. I found peace here. I'm not asking you to abandon your life, Alexander assured her. We can adapt the work to your terms. What do you say about using your knowledge to develop a truly accessible line of vehicles, efficient and durable engines for ordinary people, not just for those who can pay $500,000 for a car? The proposal clearly sparked Mary's interest. Harrington tried to do that in the 80s. The shareholders prevented him. I have majority control of Morgan, Alexander replied. The shareholders will have to be content with smaller margins if it means creating something that really matters. Mary slowly rose and walked to the window. The rain had subsided, leaving only a light drizzle. Her reflection in the glass showed a woman who, despite her advanced age, maintained a dignity and purpose that many young people would never achieve. Do you know why I continued wearing this ring all these years? She asked, without turning around. Alexander waited in silence for the answer. To remind myself that our talents are given to us not just for our own benefit, but to make a difference in the lives of others, Mary continued. Harrington understood that, and I hope you understand it now too. She turned to face him. I accept your proposal with one condition. The vehicles must be named in honor of Harrington Sheffield, not as a luxury brand, but as a symbol of innovation accessible to all. Alexander stood up and extended his hand. We have a deal, Miss Thompson. The Sheffield line will be the new focus of Morgan Enterprises. When their hands met to seal the agreement, Mary's ring shone under the soft light of the room, a symbol of the past that would now shape the future. 6 months later, Morgan Enterprises headquarters was buzzing with activity. The official presentation of the new Sheffield line of accessible and sustainable vehicles would attract the international press and the leading names in the automotive industry. On the main stage of the auditorium, Alexander Morgan, impeccably dressed as always, awaited the moment to begin his presentation. At his side, contrasting with the corporate environment, was Mary Thompson, wearing simple but elegant clothes, her golden ring subtly visible. Nervous? Alexander asked in a low voice. At 78 years old, few things still make me nervous, Mary replied with a smile. Although I must admit I never imagined being in the spotlight again. The press will go crazy when they discover who you really are, Alexander commented. The legendary Mary Thompson, emerging from retirement to revolutionize the industry once more. I'm not here for fame, Mary reminded him. I'm here because I believe in what we're doing. Alexander nodded respectfully. That's why Harrington gave the ring to you, and not to me. He knew you would never lose sight of what really matters. The auditorium lights dimmed, and Alexander stepped forward to the microphone. The audience, composed of journalists, executives, and industry enthusiasts, fell silent in expectation. Ladies and gentlemen, Alexander began, his voice carrying a humility that would have surprised those who knew him 6 months before. Today, we are not just launching a new vehicle. We are redefining what responsible innovation means. He paused, looking at Mary with genuine admiration before continuing. 6 months ago, I had the fortune of a casual encounter that changed my perspective forever. I learned that true greatness comes not from the cars we drive or the clothes we wear, but from the impact we choose to have on the world. Today, I have the honor of presenting not just a new line of vehicles, but also the extraordinary mind behind it. A woman who decades ago had already transformed our industry, although few knew her name. As Alexander invited Mary to join him at the center of the stage, the elderly woman advanced with the same serene dignity she had demonstrated on that rural road months before. The audience, initially confused about who this simple lady might be, soon erupted in thunderous applause when her identity was revealed. At that moment, the circle initiated by Harrington Sheffield decades before was completed. The ring on her finger, a symbol that had connected past and present, would now serve as a guide for a future where innovation and accessibility would walk together. Mary Thompson smiled, not for the belated recognition of her contributions, but for the certainty that her legacy would now extend far beyond formulas and patents. She had taught one of the most powerful men in the world a lesson that no fortune could buy, that a person's true value is never in what they possess, but in what they choose to do with their gifts. And that, after all, was the true message invisibly engraved on the ring that Harrington Sheffield had given only to his chosen ones, those who understood that great power brings with it an even greater responsibility. If you've come this far and this story has touched your heart, I invite you to keep this faith alive with us by subscribing to the channel and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any stories that touch the soul. And if this story has moved you, give it a like so we can continue sharing more stories like this one, made with all our hearts. Until next time.